All right.
Right, this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Committee, and it is October 21st at 5:25. Members of the committee, Councilor Tremble, we have Councilor Dean, Councilor Forney, Councilor Leonard, and Councilor Yakabaga. Also in attendance, we have Councilor Fish, Councilor Pelletier, Councilor Hawes, and I think I left somebody out again, Councilor Schaefer. Okay, so we get everybody here. The first item on the agenda, bids and purchases.
Thank you. Excuse me, our first item tonight is looking for retroactive approval actually for the community connector on the purchase of a new ticket vending machine. We began using a ticket vending machine back in 2017. It was purchased with CDBG funding with the Community and Economic Development Fund. And it was placed at the parking garage and it was being overseen and operated by Republic Parking, who was operating the bus depot out of the garage at that time. Seemed like the best location for the ticket machine and they were willing to take it on. Since then, it's been moved to various locations and different corners but it always fell under Republic Parking. Once the transit center was complete, the machine was moved there and then became under the control of Community Connector. It was obvious when they took over the machine that it was severely outdated. It was not user-friendly. There was issues with people getting change. There was issues with people not getting the tickets out of the machine. So they went on a hunt for updating the machine. It's kind of a unique type of vending machine for those books of tickets. So the current vendor, which we have, which is Ventec, seemed to be the best solution. They had a new machine that would fit our needs. It would be updated with audio and braille options. It would accept Google Pay and Apple Pay, chip cards. And they could also refurbish the current machine with all of those same features. So essentially we'd had two machines that we can put in a second location if we need to. Due to potential lengthy lead times for ordering, one was ordered at the time. The intent was to come to the very next Finance Committee meeting for approval, but staffing and other operational things got in the way, and we're here now asking for approval. So the machine was $64,816. It has been ordered. I think it's something that we all agree the transit center needs, Community Connector needs. Funding was available to purchase it, so we're looking for approval at this time that was okay for us to do.
Any questions, Councilor Hawes?
When will you be receiving?
Hopefully it would be, the anticipation is that it should arrive in the next couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks. And you'll also get the refurbished one at that time?
Yes, when they're gonna come on site to get it set up and do training, at my understanding is at that time, they're gonna refurbish it. The refurbished one, it was like $4,000 to refurbish the other one. But Lori was thinking having two available, one that we could move to a separate location other than the transit center, would be a good boon for, the whole operation.
Thank you.
Councilor Dean?
So the new machine would be going in the same place as the old machine?
The new machine is gonna replace the one at the transit center. The old machine, once the refurbishment is complete, right now Lori and the staff at the Community Connector are kind of deciding where may be the best location. We may have two of them at the transit center initially, and then we'll be able to move one if there seems to be a better area in town or some other location on one of the bus routes that may be a good place for one. We have that option to move it then.
Motion on this item?
Make the motion?
Second, without any objection. Staff has approval of it.
Thank you. Our next item is for a shuttle van for the airport. We did go out to bid. We received 5 bids. They came in between 102,500 and 135,989. Model 1, which is the recommended manufacturer for us to go with, was not the low bidder. They were the second low bidder. But the van that they have, for a couple of reasons, staff wanted to go with them. One, the van is in stock as opposed to a 38-week lead time for the low bidder. Also, the passenger door width and the length of the shuttle van was what the staff thought would be a better option for us anyway. And being able to receive it almost immediately was a big plus. It is under budget. We budgeted $125,000 for it. So the recommendation is to purchase a new shuttle van from Model One for $109,827, and the replaced shuttle van will be sold at our auction.
The other question, that's out of Hudson, New Hampshire. If that needs warranty work, is it done by the local Chevy dealership?
Mike's gonna come up and answer that. Here, Mike Moran, our fleet maintenance director.
For the warranty on the actual Chevy product, that can be handled at any of the dealerships here. A lot of times we can do warranty work for the body manufacturer, they'll pay us back for the work we've done.
Thank you. Any other questions or motion on this item?
I make a motion.
Second, moving second, and without objection, this has approval.
Thank you.
Next item, the question, the write-off.
Yeah, we have a request, from Fresh Start. They recently have gone through the process to, change their status from a for-profit entity to a nonprofit entity. They're considered now a public charity. And nonprofit entities that own property, can submit an application to the municipal assessor to, request that their property that they own be exempt from taxation if they meet an allowable use under state statute. State statute sets the deadline for that application process, which is April 1st. And that was April 1st of 2024 for our current fiscal year 2025 taxes. At the time of April 1st, our city assessor had not received the application from Fresh Start. So they assess their properties and are considered legal assessed taxes that are due on those properties. Fresh Start did submit the application to the city assessor on April 29th. After they received their tax bills under the process, once you receive your bill and if you question that assessment, a taxpayer can request that it go before the Board of Assessment Review. And first they go through the assessor. So he filed an abatement request with Phil, our city assessor, which was denied because the application was not received prior to April 1st. And then the appeal process goes through the Board of Assessment Review. It was reviewed by the Board of Assessment Review and they upheld the denial for the same reason. There was a statutory deadline for the application to be received. It was not received at that time. So neither Phil nor the board, nor staff, or even the council has the authority to modify that date. So at this point, Mr. Scott Party from Fresh Start reached out to the city tax office and asked what could be done. The only assistance that the city could offer at this time is essentially if the city chose to, what we call a write-off, essentially pay the taxes for them. And this is what happens when we deal with other abatements or supplemental or hardship abatements or other abatements, is once taxes are assessed, they really don't go away. So when we look to write stuff off, we have to charge them to an account. So this would be the city paying those taxes on behalf of Fresh Start for the 2025 assessment. Staff is not recommending that the council approve this. Our main basis for that is that we're looking at it from a equitable treatment to all taxpayers and fairness to all taxpayers. We have both nonprofit entities as well as regular taxpayers that have missed deadlines in the past. They are assessed the taxes. They pay those taxes and then they get whatever abatement or exemption that they should have the following year once that kicks in. So from staff's point of view, it is not being recommended. Mr. Party still wanted to come before the council to explain the situation and request any assistance that the city could provide. There are 7 properties that we're talking about. The total taxes in question are roughly $34,750 that he's looking for the city to adjust off and not have Fresh Start have to pay. He is here tonight if there's any questions that the committee may have directly of him. And I certainly welcome him to the table.
Did you have a statement you want to make? Scott,
Yeah.
or just take questions?
Yeah.
Go right over.
I have a statement.
Okay.
And, I'll certainly answer any questions too, as best I can.
Sure.
First of all, I want to tell you that, Philip Drew is definitely looks out he's definitely a public servant. He went through a lot of stuff with me to help me to achieve this. We went before the appeals board twice. The first time was in June.
Okay,
Yeah, and that is at the time that the city solicitor was there also, hi Dave, that, and he's the one that kind of determined that the Board of Appeals did not have the authority to backdate something. Now, I want to talk about the backdate first. It was done, the city had requested through, mortgages that were put on our property at, Center Street, that we get nonprofit status to release the mortgage, and that was kind of the deal. So we started that process back when the ARPA money was out there. And it took until August 2nd to just complete the application. That's August 2nd of last year. The IRS has 180 days to approve it, which brought it to February 2nd, on or about February 2nd. Now, when the IRS says they have a staffing problem, just as the city of Bangor always says they have a staffing problem, they weren't able to complete it until March 31st. Now, they mail it, everything they do is by mail. They don't do anything any other way. So they mailed it on April 11th is when it was postmarked. We received it on the 18th. I called Phil Drew to see what could be done. He says, oh, well, this is what we'll do. We'll go before the appeals board. And it was at that time that it was determined that the appeals board didn't have the authority to do that, to make that decision. So I was told at that point to wait until I got the tax bills and then come back and do it again in front of the appeals board. I did. I arrived sometime in September, and I couldn't get the appeals board, and neither could Phil for quite a while. And it states that in this. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at what that looked like or watch it on the thing, but it basically amounted to I couldn't get them off top dead center, thinking that we were rehashing the date thing, which we weren't rehashing the date thing. I agreed with the date thing. There's no question. I agreed with the taxable amounts that were assessed, because that's right. You know, I don't have any problem with what anybody does with taxes. And it was decided first that they weren't going to hear it, and then that they were going to hear it based on what Phil Drew pointed out to them. And Phil Drew noted that the appeal could be based on the allegation that the assessments were fraudulent, dishonest, irregular. That's the point he pointed out, irregular. So this was kind of an irregular thing. And Phil was trying to get them to see that, and so was I, but they wouldn't see it. So everything was backed right up, and the reason for the denial again was the date thing, which we'd already acknowledged was the issue. So that's kind of the history on what went on with that. And, you know, as I've done, or Fresh Start has done everything the city has asked, and we can't go back on the IRS. There's nothing they'll do about it. I could absolutely assure you that. If they're short-handed, that's the way it is. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of us have been through that with the Infernal Revenue Service. And so I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. It's a lot of money for Fresh Start. It represents a huge amount. It puts us in not in a precarious situation. I'll survive it one way or the other, but it would definitely be something, you know, I think with 35% of our population coming from the homeless community. As a matter of fact, we're regularly taking in individuals from Camp Hope, which is costing a lot less than the city having to deal with it. And, you know, I think that we do a service and we have a good relationship with the city, and we're looking for some help. And that's what I asked for in front of the appeals board, was some mercy and, mercy on taxes. And that's what an abatement is. It's mercy. So we're looking for a little mercy here. That's
Thanks,
it.
I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I don't really have any questions. I just will make a couple comments before we open up. One, I just want to reiterate what you just said about the good relationship you have with the city. I think you do have a great relationship. You do great work. I think one of the things is I've been on the finance committee for a long time, is it is tough because you have to be fair to all taxpayers. And just because you like somebody and they do good work and somebody else comes in and they're a jerk, you got to treat everybody the same. And this is probably one of the most difficult cases, I think, we face, because I'd like to say, yeah, Scott, we're gonna take care of this abatement, but I'm troubled by it because of the precedent it would set. You're a great guy, your organization's great. Again, it's $34,000 that would go towards housing for people that desperately need it. But again, I mean, you're, you know, by the same token, your organization could have changed their status 6 or 7 years ago and had had over $100,000 in taxes you paid for real estate taxes. So, I mean, it's really not the city's fault that you decided to change this year, and by a few days, it just didn't, the timing was off by the IRS being busy or this or that. So, I mean, I really do appreciate the work you do, and that it's great work and it's needed, and this money could go to help people that are homeless, but I just think it would be an awful precedent. I'm sure there's other questions and comments, so. It's not Council Dean.
I think the most unfortunate thing is we're going from forgiveness situation to actually having to pay this amount of money. So it's almost like a double whammy.
Can I ask a question? Is there an account called an overlay account that's used for that in particular to write off taxes? Is that correct?
Right. Part of the city's budget includes an overlay account, which is designed to deal with hardship abatements, assessment issues, abatements that Phil does. So there is amounts that are budgeted for that this would come out of that account. Some years we use it all. Some years we have money left over at the end of the year. Can't say it's a little too early into this fiscal year as to whether or not there's a balance of 229,000 in there right now. And that seems like a lot of money, but there are years that we have used all of that up depending on what other abatements may come through or issues that have come through. Can't say whether or not that will be fully available the rest of the year or not. But what typically gets there or is an offset against that is valid abatement issues. Not that saying that this isn't a valid request, but it's stuff that has gone through the hardship abatement process, going through our policy to do that, or assessment issues that our city assessor has found where they've assessed somebody for 3 swimming pools and we know that they only have 1 or they don't have any, so they do an abatement and adjust their taxes, pending a review and an inspection of the property. In this particular situation, again, certainly understand and mirror Councilor Tremble's comments on Fresh Start and what they do. It's the concern of there are other nonprofit entities specifically that have currently requested and have in the past requested very similar type treatment from the city. And the answer historically, from staff's perspective, has been no, to be fair across the board. So if we do that, if we go down that road, just council should be aware that this won't be the first time this happens. And at that point, to be fair to everybody, we would need to bring all of those requests forward. And we try to look for something that's particularly unique or different to make a situation stand out and say, okay, this is a one-off type situation. And nothing that I could see in this particular scenario fit into that category, hence staff's recommendation. And I did speak with the city assessor when I was putting together their agenda. He said, based on the information, he agreed with that he wasn't gonna recommend it either. The tax collector's position, because that's their job, is to collect taxes, is also that, but we certainly will act at the will of the council if you decide to do something.
Councilor Iacobardo?
So I always talk about fairness, since I have come to the council and we had some situations where staff decided or thought that it's to accept, recommended that we move forward and accept, not necessarily non-profit, and I always, it happened a couple of times and I thought, it's not fair for the rest of businesses, who pay taxes regularly. With this specific case, the amount is big. 34,000 is a big number. For the sake of fairness, it's a lot maybe to consider the whole amount, but I'm thinking, is there a way maybe to forgive part of this number?
Mhm.
This is what I'm suggesting, to forgive part of this number. Given it was not his fault that he was late in filing for the abatement process. I think it's, you received the letter later than, it was out of your hand. It was. So that's my suggestion. If there's, if we use, and you said, David, maybe there is no way for us to know now if there is money. So there is,
Right.
when do we know if
I
there
mean,
is?
we won't really know until the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
It's, we never really know when someone may come forward and say, hey, I don't have, three
Yeah,
swimming pools.
yeah.
I understand what your comments on there, and yes, you're right, we have come with staff recommendations in the past with particular taxpayers, normally on personal property where we've agreed to a reduced amount due to certain circumstances. But the council, this is a charge that's due to the city. You don't have the authority to abate the taxes, you don't have the authority to change the assessment, but you do have the authority to forgive, for lack of a better word, amounts due to the city of Bangor. So if you come to a consensus that you want to do, 100% of it or 50% of it and split it both ways, that is within your prerogative to do as a amount due to the city unrelated to modifying the assessment or the taxes.
I mean, for me, I just think of it as a gesture to continue the collaboration with Fresh Start. I mean, we know there has been this collaboration and we supported them through ARPA. I don't know if the rest of the council agrees with my suggestion to forgive part of the amount.
Council Schaefer and then Council Leonard.
I actually disagree with that because I think that we were very collaborative when there was a lot of concern about donating ARPA funds to a for-profit when you were a for-profit, and we did. And so as Councillor Trimble has said, there have been many years that you could have applied to have been a nonprofit, and so I feel like we sort of extended that olive branch and that trust, and I think that all of us think you're great, but to extend, to change it, I don't want to set that precedent that then the mall comes in and says, well, okay, we're gonna be a nonprofit now, and we don't want to give our tax money back too. Like, I think it really comes down to the precedent and the fairness factor. I feel like we made that compromise a little bit in the ARPA allocation when it was a for-profit, and so I'm not a voting member of this committee, but my thoughts are that it would set a bad precedent to do this at this time.
Council Leonard.
So one thing I'll say is I'm actually not a fan of breaking precedences. Breaking precedent is not necessarily always the worst thing in the world. That said, I do agree that we do need to be fair and equitable and making sure that we give everyone the same opportunities as everyone else and we treat everyone fairly. I can't help but remember in the back of my head all the money Fresh Start saves us on the emergency end and on the police end and the firefighters end. Saves a lot of people from going to emergency rooms, which single individual who's houseless costs on average, what, like $1 million, $2 million a year on just emergency room services. And I know the Northern Light and St. Joe's get flooded all the time, especially around the holiday season. I would be amendable to a partial forgiveness if that were something that the finance committee would want to look at. I still want to have a further discussion on this just to make sure that the precedent isn't necessarily that's being broken isn't necessarily going to be a legal issue. But beyond that, I don't see a reason to, at the very least, not consider this at the finance committee and then move it on to full council.
This wouldn't go to the full council.
It doesn't need to.
Make the
You
It doesn't need to, okay.
No, you got, the finance
Right.
committee has the. I'm looking at the city manager who's giving me the look.
Council Fournier.
These dates stink. They really do. I think it's incredibly unfortunate. But I have to echo what Councilor Trumbull is saying about everything that he said. And also setting a precedent, which I do not want. I don't want to go down that road. So I cannot be supportive, but I agree, and everything that you do. Personally, you do a great job.
Councilor Fish.
As you know, Scott, I'm very supportive of your organization, have been for a long time. And I'm not part of this committee, but I do wonder, have we had any incidents at all where we have given an abatement because there was a situation with dates that you can recall?
I don't recall dates. I do recall some of the ones that I know that we have recommended compromises on in the past. Again, it's mainly on personal property. People who have not paid for years and years and years, and then they sold their business and the new owner comes in and says, can I do something? And we'll try to work something out with them, or
I just interject there, but personal property is completely different too, because we don't have a way to go after personal property. We can lien real estate, personal
Correct.
property, people can just walk away and there's nothing we can do.
That is correct. So we kind of try.
When they make a deal,
Yeah.
we're like very grateful.
Right, there are times, I believe we've done some, partial, workouts or with, heirs to someone who may not have paid the real estate taxes for years and years and years, and then they pass away and the heirs come in and say, oh, I didn't know they hadn't paid for 9 years. Can we do something? And typically we would look for we typically try to get all of the principal balance. We may forgive interest, and fees, lien fees that we've incurred. But we do try to, in those cases, at least get the principal portion that should have been paid had the taxes been paid on time. But I don't recall a situation where dates were particularly the issue, that something was missed just by a few dates.
Anything else? Is there? Councilor Dean?
Is it under a purview to excuse any interest if the payments cannot be made, if we decide not to forgive? Could that be part of the,
Yeah,
Decision.
I mean.
if he's not able to pay this right now because
They're paid.
there.
Yeah, he
I
did,
paid
he
in
come in and paid,
September.
he came in and paid the first installment already, so the March installment is still outstanding, but he has paid the first installment.
And even a partial would be much appreciated, anything at this point. We're inundated with people that can't pay us. And, it will make a huge difference. And, like I say, I'm looking for some mercy.
Any other discussion, or is there a motion to go any direction?
I mean, I would love for us to consider 50%, but again, in the end, it's a committee, so whatever the committee would go with.
Was that, did you want to make a motion in there?
I make a motion to forgive 50%, or I don't know, it's again.
No, you can make any motion you want, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, a motion to
Okay.
forgive 50% of
I'll
the.
second it.
Second, and if this motion fails and we don't have to make a motion to deny it, right? We just. This motion fails, do we need to make a motion to deny the request? Or we just,
No, I guess I would sort of like something to
say.
you confirm staff recommendations.
Okay, yeah, okay. So on this, we have Counselor, no, Counselor Fournier,
No,
Counselor Yakabaga,
Yes,
Counselor Leonard,
Yes,
and Counselor Dean.
No,
So 3-2 fails. Is there a motion to confirm the staff recommendation?
so moved.
Is there a second?
second.
And any objection? I'm seeing no objection. That's. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Yep, thank you.
And Counselor Schaefer, can you finish sharing this? I have to be at 6 o'clock appointment. I'll be a little late.
All right, so the next item is An order authorizing retroactive authorization to apply for allocation funding from the Penobscot County Emergency, I'm not even on this committee, but.
Oh, I wasn't thinking you were on the committee. Council Fornier, can you take over?
Yeah, as Councilor Schaefer said, go ahead.
Yeah, we just, You get-
Just do the order.
okay, County Emergency Management Agency for fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 for police and fire, the amounts of $109,420 and $81,247.
I could not have done it that.
Like the FedEx.
So quick history, Bangor Police and Fire have been receiving Homeland Security money for a number of years through the Maine Emergency Management Agency, and prior to fiscal year 2022, the state issued that funding to the 16 counties as well as 6 metro public safety departments, Bangor being one of those 6. In 2022, they changed the way that it was going to be funded, and they only sent the money to the counties. And the metro departments would have to file an application with the individual counties in order to receive an allocation. Staff went ahead and did that. They were awarded allocation and money was set aside for Bangor Police and Fire for both of those years. But what staff missed at the time was that in order to file that type of application, it needed to come to the council to request permission to apply for the funding, and then a second resolve to the council to accept and appropriate the funding. So we are coming before the committee and then full council next week for the order to ask for retroactive approval to apply for the funding. Where the resolve takes 2 readings, as the assistant city manager mentioned earlier, we didn't want to split that between councils. So we will wait until after the election to bring forth the resolve for retroactive approval to accept and appropriate. So even though we were awarded funding, the funding is available. We have not drawn down the funding from Penobscot County, so we have not technically spent this money yet. But we're looking for approval now, that the application process was okay for us to do to get this money. There's no local match. So it's essentially between the 2 years, $190,000 that we can use toward public safety. So we're looking for approval to accept that, to apply, which will be on full council next week also for approval.
So can't we do this in one reading?
The one reading for the apply, but the accept and appropriate takes 2 readings because it's a resolve under the charter. So it would end up crossing councils.
And we can't do them both at the same meeting?
You can waive second reading.
We can waive the
Okay,
second reading.
Second reading.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Is that what you'd like to do?
Would you like to do that?
That's what, well, I want to hear from the committee, but to me, it makes sense to keep it all within one council year and do it all at once. That would be my opinion.
Okay,
No objection.
okay, we will do that. Assuming this passes.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, motion to.
So
Motion, thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. Seeing no objections.
Perfect. All right, we'll get that on next week's agenda.
All right, my favorite, interim
Favorite.
financials.
So I put together a June year end. Again, this is preliminary and draft because we're still undergoing the audit. The auditor showed up today. So the audit is in process. So there'll be entries that will impact these numbers as we go through the audit process. So this is, an overview, but it's not going to be the exact numbers that will end up in the financial statements or the exact final numbers. So looking at general fund revenues, as we've done in the past, just kind of point out what's included and look at any accounts that are sort of out of variance. Taxes, that's pretty much they're a little bit over budget by about 284,000. Of course, that picks up any increase in excise taxes, it's supplemental taxes that may have occurred throughout the year for additional tax money. So that's pretty much on par, pretty good about budgeting with that. Licenses and permits, again, those are higher than what we budgeted. Those came in over budget. That is primarily due to vitriol's licenses and building permits. I apologize to Councilor Fournier. I was not able to get the total number of building permits. But through May, the financials we did in May, the split, it was like 85-15 between new and old construction building permits. There's about $37,000 additional ones that have come in since May.
85 new or 85?
85 was old,
Old.
15 new, 85 old. The fines are primarily false alarm fees, ordinance and land use fees. The increase there, as you can see, is 342% over budget. That is the vacant building registry, because that was not part of the budget. That's about $40,000. That makes up that excess of 53 that came in over budget. Revenue from uses of money, Parks and Rec, facilities, interest earnings. Again, that is a little bit over budget. Parks and Rec had some, particularly the Kids Cave, came in over budget for revenue. The intergovernmental, that's the one that came in based on the numbers now under budget. And that is primarily related to issues with the general assistance, where we've had fewer expenses on general assistance, which in turn means we have less revenue for general assistance. And the charges for services, that is ambulance fees, bus fares, those types of things, rental of the city parks. Mainly it is ambulance billings and some outside assignments that has put that slightly over budget. Transfers in is charges to the proprietary funds, which is the airport, water quality, stormwater. And those are for reimbursement of services to the general fund. They're roughly on par with budget. There may be a few more entries that still need to get done as part of the audit. So they're slightly under, but they're on par with what we budget for. And other is transfers from fund balance, insurance settlements. Those, it's typically recorded near the end of the year or during the audit process. Some of those, like insurance settlements, there's really no way to budget for those. It's some years they're high, some years they're low. But in total, we're looking at that the difference between actual and budgeted projections of about $1 million. We're slightly looking like we're slightly under, but again, there's entries that still need to be made. Some in various departments, so we're still pretty close to being on par with budget. So we'll see where we come in at once all the audit entries are done. Is there any questions on revenues? Okay, move on to expenses. Most departments, as you'll see, looking at a 10% variance between actual versus full budget. Most departments are within that 10%. The records department, which is the clerk and treasury office, they're a little under on their expenses, but that's mainly due to vacancies and turnover. There was, I think they became fully staffed maybe once during the last fiscal year at one point. The rest of the legal department, they're under a little bit. That was again due to vacancies, as well as some health insurance savings due to those vacancies. The central services, they are it looks a little weird with their budget, but that is because we had some higher than anticipated charges. They do most of their work gets charged out to other departments. And they did more work than what was expected, so that nets against their expenses. So it looks like they only spent 19,000 for the year, as opposed to the 53 that was budgeted, but that was because there was additional charges to general fund departments. The other departments like human resources, motor pool, community connector, finance, all pretty much on par with budget. Insurance, we had the expenses are lower than projected due to, we had fewer claims this year. And again, they're offset by billings to other funds, to other general fund departments. The planning expenditures are higher due to advertising costs and contractual costs, which were related to the rental registry that we started. And most other, let's see, economic development, code, police, fire, pretty much all on par. Health and Community Services, again, is, lower because of the general assistance as the primary, less expenses for there. Recreation, Public Services on par. Debt service, that has some additional funding because we budgeted for the assumption that we would do a bond order last year, which did not happen, so we have that extra funding in there. That was assumed that we would have some additional debt service. The tax increment financing, those payments are made throughout the year. That reflects what we've paid so far. The pensions, that's pretty much on par. And that's based on our debt service schedule. Transfers in, most of the transfers occur at the beginning of the year, so that's pretty much out right on budget. And the other agencies, that reflects our county taxes, as well as the library, and the snowmobile club and those other agencies that we fund. And again, those are done typically through a quarterly basis, or as they are incurred, so that's fairly close to for the full year on the budget. So looking in total, as of right now, again, with barring any entries that need to get done, our expenditures have come in slightly under budget. We're looking at about $3.5 million at the moment that we came in under budget. A lot of that is primarily related to staffing vacancies and some insurance savings.
So if I'm a layman, I'm looking at the total revenues of 97 million, and then I look at total expenses of 67 million, it's a $30 million gap. Help me understand that.
That is because the school department is not included.
Ah,
in here.
there you go.
The school department is included in taxes because it's part of the tax,
All right,
but their expenses are not reported.
all right. Good.
Any questions on
Counselor
those?
Dean?
If we look at the difference between 23 and 24, is the difference again due to staffing back in 23?
23 was also some staffing issues as well, yes. We've been struggling with staff. 23, the Community and Economic Development Department was almost non-existent. They are now back. The Treasury and Clerk's Office were in and out of staffing for quite a bit. Finance was down staff at the same time. So that was sort of across the board thing for the last few years. It has been a struggle finding applicants and qualified applicants, but it is turning around. We're seeing more and more people apply for the positions now. So we have at least a better pool of people to try to get those. And some departments are nearing or have finally got to be fully staffed. So we're getting there.
That's good to hear.
Other questions? For the first quarter?
Okay, so I put together a quick first quarter for the 25 fiscal year. And again, looking at these, the taxes obviously jump out because we book taxes when they are committed in July. So we essentially hit pretty much the full budget right out of the gate. And then that gets modified throughout the year for excise taxes or supplementals or other changes that have come through. Licenses and permits. And again, that's the licenses and building permits have so far starting right into 25 have also been a little bit higher out of the gate during the summer months than a straight 25% of which is the expected budget. Whether that continues throughout the year, we're not sure, but it was a little bit above. The fines and land use issues, again, that is way above budget. Again, that relates to the vacant building registry, because when that came in, it's not part of the 25 budget either. So we haven't started budgeting for those funds. So that looks a little like an anomaly, but that is basically related to the vacant building properties. And the rest of them, intergovernmental money is, that's just timing with, when receipts are posted. The charges for services are on par with budget. Transfers in, are again, due to timing of when we charge the outside departments. And the transfers are essentially way down, but that's because most of those and the others are done near the end of the year, so that will look a little odd throughout the year. Overall, we're not, most departments are not too bad off. They're within that where we expect them to be at this time. Some are above, some are a little bit below. Any questions on those? And again, on the expense side, for the most part, again, most divisions are on par where we would expect them to be within, at that 25% range for the first quarter. The city council is a little bit down. It's just around 15%. That's mainly because there's been less in this first quarter, less travel, educational type expenses that as opposed to last year at this time. The motor pool looks a little high, but that's in relation to the billings of the other departments. There's a lot of credits that get posted. Typically, they're posted near the beginning of the year. Those haven't been processed yet. So once that happens, that will change that number. The same with the insurance division. The insurance looks really high, but that is related to when we allocate the insurance charges out to the other departments. And going down, most of the rest of them are on par with budget. The tax increment financing down there, the last 3 or 4, which doesn't look like we've expended anything, and that's because it's the some of those don't get posted until they haven't get posted yet. They'll be posted in the second quarter, so you'll see those catch up. A lot of it comes down to timing when things get put in. The pension bond debt is due in May, so that will look a little odd until we catch up with that. Same as transfers. And then the other agencies is our payments again for county tax and library. So some of these that look a little odd at this point is related to timing of when things are done. We are a little bit behind on getting some things posted because of staffing. We're working on that. We brought in some additional help in the finance department to try to get us caught up on all of the posting. And so a lot of this will get reflected and be caught back up in the next quarter.
Questions?
Appreciate the update.
You're welcome.
Yes, very much. Thanks.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. If there's nothing else,
That is all I have unless the committee has any questions or concerns.
we are adjourned.